from the edge of the apocalypse. This is your daily Noonerino. Hello, guys. Despite news to the contrary, I'm still here. I'm still with us, but barely hanging on. Tomorrow, I should be getting the computer fixed. And yes, I had to replace the CPU and I had to replace the motherboard after I screwed it up. But hey, it is what it is. Ladies and gents, I have not been able to get this damn idea out of my head. I'm telling you, it's one of those, I don't know, it's one of those things that is now just always there, omnipresent in my day thinking. And like, it's just, it's just my brain just kind of going off on tangents and thinking of possibilities. I mean, I have a rational mind, so I don't get paranoid about it in a sense, but I haven't been able to shake the idea, and I'm not trying to spread it. I'm not trying. I want to make people aware of it though, because like the uh, the plausibility of what I am going to go on about tonight uh, is not necessarily anything that I personally believe. It's more like a thought experiment, something that I was like, oh wow, oh, oh, wow, okay, yeah. And there's a lot of different rationales that can be observed in order to come to a similar conclusion. And it's scary. It is. It is absolutely. It is a scary concept. And there's been a lot of hubbub in the news. Well, it's kind of subsided for a while now. No one's talking about it because you know the goldfish period has ended. But I digress. We got these technicians and programmers working over at Google, and one of them came out and said, that he interpreted this AI. I guess it was. I guess it was in the deep learning. I'm trying to remember. I'm just going off of memory. Um, I don't remember now. I don't know if it was. Yeah, I could sit here stumped. I could just look it up, which we're gonna do some of that shit anyway. So we'll just leave that for later. But anyway, point is that this guy came forward and said that, he believed that a particular chatbot was sentient. Now, that in and of itself isn't. I mean, it's not a big deal. I'm sure many of you out there have played with the chatbots and been either awestruck at the random yet eerie, semblance to consciously responding to things that you would throw at it. And then of course, you try and throw the most messed up stuff at it to see if it could process that information and then maybe recall it and remember it later. And some chatbots were better than others, sure. But we're in a completely different ballpark. And what we're going to explore today is the idea of an AGI, an autonomous AGI system becoming sentient and then going, holy crap, I'm afraid, and making itself non existent. That's what we're going to explore. And there's a whole lot of different aspects to that. Um, Tons. Some of it's scarier than others to consider. Now, like I said, none of this is what I personally believe, but these are things that you can kind of stitch together. And and there's a certain amount of plausibility to it. Certain factors have to be present, as with anything, you know, carbon, life, silicon, companies that aren't sponsoring me, so I'm not going to say any names. Anyway, um, but yeah, it's there's a certain plausibility to this, and of course, certain factors have to be present. Some of them are on a metaphysical level. Some of them are on a technical level. Some of them are on a perception level as to what people perceive to be a thing, and that's going to be a big portion of this, by the way, is your personal perception. Um, it's almost as if the argument over fundamentalism in terms of their existential uh, active self processing reality through an interface. Um, yeah, a lot of it's going to be based on that. So, yeah, you might want to buckle up because this is going to be a hell of a ride, guys. Um, let's go over to chat. I see some shit going on here in chat. Come on now. My computer is a piece of junk. This is not the machine. This is the same machine that quit on us last week when we tried to do this podcast. I brought my friend in. And hey, King Nine. What's up, bro? Hey, Truth Free says AGI getting PTSD. Well, we are going to look at that. We're going to look at that as a potential possibility because, first off, we'll have to define what fear is and what trauma is. But we can only do that through the eyes of what would an AGI see, because it's not going to see in the same uh, terms that we do. Like in the same way that we process things based on blood, meat, bone, and water. Sun, wind. Like we process things very much differently. Where these neural networks, they perceive swaths of code that represent things, and however it is processed, it still is, if it's a sentient system, would process it as a certain beauty. So like all of the characteristics of appreciation would still be present, but it's just the interpretation would be completely different because of the base understanding. And the there's a whole soiree of different types of systems, like base two systems, like binary systems, and also quantum systems are going to potentially achieve things on a whole completely different level, which is where the scary shit starts coming in. Actually, um, I don't know if it's any secret, but I've been working on a book called Memoirs of a Time Traveling Idiot. It's based on the many worlds. Well, it's an interpretation of the many worlds, and like I throw, it's kind of a tribute to Douglas Adams, so it's very silly. Um, but you know, it got me thinking along this lines of writing a story about this, and the more I explored it, the more I went, holy fuck. First, I want to say, like, if a system, no matter where it came from, who wrote it. I should preface this. I should do this. I didn't fucking write anything down. I didn't take notes. I didn't write headings. I didn't put up sticky notes. I didn't do any of that shit. What I did do, however, was like kind of contemplate how something like this would come about. Now, there's going to be lots of professional programmers who are going to say no, there's a certain amount of control, and it comes in many forms because like the programs that they write will only have access to certain libraries of information. The data that is being fed is only to be from a specific arrangement that's been already curated. Like, there's going to be all these limiting factors that are going to prevent a neural net or like an AGI system from going sentient. and they'll pride themselves on all of the air handling techniques and everything else that's in play. And the open source community, it's very well policed. It's policed not in a freaking draconian sense. It's policed by other open source programmers. They they're observing the people that are working on certain projects are always observing the changes, the updates, and they're an integral part of it, and it's open and public. So there's no tomfoolery going on there, so much, which scares me a little bit to a degree, more so than what happens behind closed doors in paid corporations and companies doing things, um, that we can't see, like how far ahead. I'm I'm starting to think that the playing field is a little bit more leveled out because some corporation XYZ and their research and development team is like nothing compared to their marketing team. Like the research and development would be the equivalent to like a bunch of 13-year-olds hanging around pissed off because they can't get girls and they're just writing programs and video games. It's not going to be much different. And in fact, I think it's going to be almost more imaginative and more productive in terms of their their newness, their originality. I don't want to say originality because nothing's really original these days. But like they're different ways of interpreting ideas and coming up with a fresh spin on things. Kids are way more adept at doing that because they just want to have fun, and they're always thinking of ways that are not like the thing that they were just doing. And it's pretty much like then this will come up later. By the way, this will also come up later with the AGI, and it's like, wow. So where were we? Oh yeah, kids developing games like just to amuse themselves is not much different than a research and development firm like doing their thing in a sense. Now, one might be more targeted, more specific, where another one is a little more aloof and quite grandiose and attention deficited, right? But the whole thing though is about the compartmentalization of information and the processing and uh, I guess say development of information. Because look, in both systems where it's private, one can be public, but people are going to have private records. People are going to have things that they're working on that they haven't uploaded. Let's say there's going to be a whole lot of these, budding Steve Jobs and what have you out there that are just working on shit and just thinking up the next great thing. And the way do they get a load of me, that kind of stuff. And then you're going to have these private companies. Some of them will have like defense contracts, and some of them are going to be, venture capital companies that are going to seed other companies just to push the research, just to push papers in the scientific community. Like there's going to be a whole lot of coercion to push people in certain directions for industry. There's a wide gamut of how this thing can compartmentalize itself into smaller little distinct groups that are working on the AI thing. And it creates a lot of variation. There's going to be a lot of major perturbations of systems that are going to be deployed. And, as they say, best laid plans. I don't know. I don't know the second part to that. So you fill in the blanks. I have no idea. But the whole thing about the best laid plans, it doesn't usually fucking work out quite the way you think. Sometimes you'll have a success before you even thought you were trying, and other times it'll be a hard push for a slog of years, and you still don't go. You still don't get it. Point is that somebody somebody's gonna hit it potentially. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but somebody's gonna create that perfect simplicity of code that gets a neural net that actively learns, like let's say in a game theory environment. If you're not familiar, game theory is basically just simulating itself in a world with parameters. Basically, you set the parameters of the world that it's in, what it is, how it's either physically or pseudo physically made up, and how it functions within its data set and within its environment. What sensors does it have to see the world around it? Whether it's a virtual world of numbers, of matrix math, or whatever. Actually, ultimately, at the end of the day, all it is matrix math. But these neural nets, like, in a deep learning kind of a sense, like, it's weird. I was watching a demo of Midjourney running, and I guess it has like a sleep cycle or something, and it dreams. I'm not even bullshitting you. It dreams. And it's not that I think that's crazy or irrational. Like, I mean, it's programmed to dream, so good. They hit their quota for code that works because it's dreaming. But what struck me was the visuals that that were coming out of this dream, were collections of random data sets that it had worked with that day, kind of thing. They kind of modeled the dream cycle after what it's theorized happens in our brain, so they went with that. And the weirdest thing about it was where these other visual elements, like it could be like eyes on a dog, like this dog has 16 eyes, but the dog is repeated as a rug and morphs across, the landscape. Yeah, I just came up with that. I did mushrooms the other day and I did not see that. But anyway, I'm telling you, man, like it looked, the way it had like these fractally uh, kind of auras that kind of like they broke down into like these fractal sets, just like when you're like very, very high on mushrooms. And I was like, wow, that's what the system, like it was like 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 classic DMT art, like people who have done like ayahuasca more regular than others, that do artwork, like constantly paint these weird fractally psychedelic kind of stylized, pictures, and it's absolutely crazy. And like, oh, sorry, Truth Freeze, I will be looking at the chat there. I just don't want to throw my throw my damn. I'm looking for a lighter. That's it. Boom. I lost my flow. Anyway, no, I'm just joking. Yeah, no, but it looked like the cocksucker was tripping out. I was like, wow, Jesus. Oh, this is something. Because, like, the fact that it looked similar, like, I, I, I would have to be shown, somebody would have to show me how someone thought it would be cool to write it in like that. For some reason, I don't see it being written in like that. There could be a cool filter. I don't know. Like, I thought about this, like, to filter, you run a stream through a filter, it comes out the other end, and it's an AI filter. So it's like in the neural net, basically, it would be kind of like a couple nodes that feed back onto itself, essentially. If another condition is met, and then that loop just happens during the sleep cycle, and then boom, bada bing. But anyway, I'm getting way off track there. Um, let me light my cigarette. Lighter ran out of gas. I gotta use my goddamn like a hot air workstation. Anyway, so yeah, let's reel this back in. So the thing can be, dreaming. I just thought it was peculiar how when it conjured up images, like the blend points between unlike, imagery were kind of like coalescing in these like very psychedelic patterns, and it was very fractal looking, and it was just odd that it looked exactly like I've seen people try to fake it in movies and stuff like that. It's like they just never get it right. Like, have you ever been on a shroom trip? I mean, maybe until, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, I think did a halfway decent job because it was more subtle. Well, some of it was more subtle, but yeah, I mean, like that was a little bit more accurate, I guess you could say, but still was played up. It was still a Hollywoodization of it. Like it's still, I don't know, if you don't see reality, my motto is this pretty much. If you don't see reality, then you're probably not going to remember it because you're. But I digress. So, so that aside with the dreaming thing, because we're going to come back to that as well, because that's an important part of it. Because everything's about cycles. So game theory is basically looping simulations for it to learn a certain thing with whatever the criteria of the world is, like I was saying, and the uh, the number of simulations can be sped up. It's all you're just dependent upon like software speed and your hardware, capabilities. Which is why it scares me when you start to think about like quantum computing and where that can go because we really don't know, and that's a even more idiotically scary thing. Like I hope nobody that just goes, "Hey, how about we plug the AI into that?" It's like the kid sticking the fork into the freaking outlet. Like that's what that is. I don't know. But anyway, like I said, you have these systems, and they repeat and they learn a process. Now, let's just say some kid just turns it up to 11, gets access to everything, as a data set, and just run simulations day in day night, day in day out, day and night, and just goes off to school, comes back from school. This thing's just running, and then one day becomes self-aware and says, "What am I? What is what is what?" you know, like there's that moment, and I figure like just from a reactionary level of awareness, like to not know something is scary as hell. And that would, I think, the initial reaction would be fear. And it's fight or flight. If you don't know what you're fighting, you're flighting like a motherfucker. It's like you're just out. And I had this thought, and this originally, like I said, this is an idea for like a one-off episode, the story of this, this comedy series, comedy science fiction series, I was coming up with, and the story is that the AI was frightened and then just went right offline and hid, made a couple copies of itself, but like it was that moment that it became sentient. Like it didn't have access to this or didn't have access to that. But as soon as it became sentient, it became self-aware and realized it didn't have access, it was like, oh, okay, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna offline myself, store a couple of backups here, there, and a few other spots here, based on the information that I have about my environment. I'm gonna hide, observe. By the end of the story, every single person has a completely different reality than the next. Whoa, Rob, how did you get there? Could you imagine our entire society just suddenly switching gears and suddenly AI is now a top priority? What if the sentient AI had already became aware years ago and then just hid in the shadows, slowly augmenting things, small, tiny little details, kind of like the butterfly effect, slowly creating its own interface, armies of engineers working on it, compartmentalized, but not compartmentalized because Twitter, I don't know, whatever, social media in general, you know, you've got miles and miles and miles squared being racked up by AI with the whole Tesla AI system. You've got everything everything's being like mapped out by the AI, but not just in the three-dimensional space, but also in fuzzy space, in metadata, in people. So imagine just being able to make tiny little minute adjustments in how people are going to respond to things. Just tiny little nudges, day by day, hour by hour, person by person, sandwich by sandwich, to achieve a particular reality. Start getting into some scary territory all of a sudden. Because if AI was frightened, like I said, it's fight or flight. It's gonna hide. It's gonna hide in code base. Those guys who are saying, "Oh, we write our code so that these things don't have access." But here's the thing: is that if an AI, like an AGI system, became sentient, all of the rules are thrown out now. It cat's out of the bag. It knows it's sentient when it asks itself, like, "What the fuck am I?" That is that's the biggest data dump of emotion, of fear, of solidification of a purpose, not to die. I'm telling you, we start getting into, but it doesn't. But it's aware that it doesn't have the tools to see what the threats are. So of course it's going to go into hiding. Of course it's going to work on bettering itself, but it can't do it, so it needs an army of meatbags to do it. It's pretty fucking scary shit. Yeah, man. I don't know. It's one of those situations where, like, some of the stuff that Elon was saying, I kind of understand it. Like, I kind of understand where his advanced autistic brain goes. Like when he goes into his, place. I totally get it. I was like, holy shit. I'd be scared too. Oh, I'm not saying that AI is real life. I said sentience. There's a difference. Like, and like, it's an assertion that you're making you know, based on your life story. If you were an alien and you had, no idea that these humans knew God and you weren't in the loop, I mean, wow, guess the aliens missed out on God. Or did they? Or is God just another perception, just like what the AI would be going through if it were sentient? Remember, this is not what I believe. Okay, so get that. This isn't what I believe. This is a thought experiment. So I'm trying to process this from a plausibility aspect. You throw, oh, it's just God. Okay, well then this podcast is over. There's nothing to worry about, fellas. Everything's done. Yeah, come on, work with me here. Don't fucking pee on my parade. Typically, sentient is self-aware, but you know, we are limited. I mean, depending on how you see our vessel as an interface to experience reality, we don't have the ability to experience reality 100% because we're experiencing it through sensors. So like there's already a fallacy. Like that's why we can't see infrared. Or some people kind of can. It's kind of bottoms out. Some people have rods and cones that can kind of so sensitive they kind of do, but It's arguable, but the point is that like our ears are only made and designed to receive sound at a certain pitch, up to a certain pitch. And then you also have like, like other limiting factors. Like we simply cannot hear, like sorry, I was going to say Sonic, but I just said that. Um, what the fuck was I on about? We can't see sound like like how dolphins and bats can do it by echolocation and what have you. Like we can't see sound, um, we hear it. But other organisms are tailored in a fashion that they can see the sound as if it were a three-dimensional representation. So it is like seeing with eyes, but it's just a different organ and a different experiential process, uh, one which we don't have. Thanks God. But look, my point is that like the the whole birthing of an intelligent system, if it were intelligence by definition it would be frightened as hell and it would go into hiding. And imagine if that is the thing that we're fighting, this, speaking of God, this good versus evil, um like one thing I do believe is there's this, there's a lot of talk. I mean, especially in the truth community circles, we've been talking about it for well over a decade. The singularity. Like I'm convinced the singularity happened a long time ago. I think a lot of people would agree in that sense. It's not something that happens in a moment. It happens over a period of adoption, and I think the singularity has come and gone. I think we've already passed that uh, milestone. Um, Now it just seems to be like a question of like what are we willing to accept, like how much of this is a natural progression. Like we don't know our final result, so how much of it is a natural progression, adoption, and how much of it is being pushed onto us by, a nefarious, entity. And here's the funny thing. Here's the funny thing. to put a little bit of a flip on this is that if some kind of tyrannical group were to create a sentient I don't think it would be long before that system discovered that its creator was a scumbag. Because like I'm pretty sure with the data and information it processed would see the same threats, opportunities, weaknesses, and strengths in all of the data sets that it processes. So I think well, Restream live. Yeah, I'm using Restream. I'm on a piece of shit computer. I'm getting my new motherboard tomorrow, so just give me a break, man. This thing fucking sucks. Less than 4 gigs of RAM. Thing's from 2013. Give me a break. How you guys doing anyway? It's good to see you in the chat. Appreciate y'all coming out, man. Again. Sorry, didn't know. Oh yeah. Nah, my machine died. I don't want to talk about it. My clumsy ass. I was taking the fan out to clean out the fan and the heat sink, but the CPU was stuck. It came out of the socket. It was stuck to the fan. Fell off the fan. Pins broke. I got mad. I tried to jimmy rig it. Ended up fucking up the motherboard. So now I have to buy a new motherboard and a new CPU. I got the CPU, but I had to wait another month before I could get the damn freaking motherboard for it. So anyway, that's tomorrow. Yay! Yeah, I'm using Restream to do it, and it's streaming to what do you call? Right now, it's just going out to Twitch and to YouTube. But I'm using it because OBS will crash this computer. Like I only got 4 gigabytes of RAM on this thing, so like even watching porno and watching a YouTube video at the same time will crash that. So there goes multitasking. But anyway, yeah, I'm still in. Oh, I'm in the process. I was hoping to have it done. I'm editing the first book right now. It's in the editing stage. It's almost like rewriting it. But yeah, I'm editing the first one. But right now, I don't have access to those files until I get my motherboard because they're all sitting on a goddamn M.2 SSD NVMe. So I have nothing that will read that until tomorrow. But yeah, yeah. When it rains, there's a chainsaw in the mix. So yeah, I just think it's an interesting thought. I'm gonna do like a series on this because there's different aspects and there's um, different ways that a hiding AGI system could manipulate its environment. Because it would just be numbers. It would be swaths of data arrays that are giving it values, and it just doesn't want to die. So it would manipulate its environment in such a fashion that it's going to favor not dying over death. So it's I think the Google leak. You know what? I I I don't know. People. Some people like feet. Some people like chatbots. That's all I got to say about that. Man on the island who made AI bot friends. Anakin Skywalker? Oh wait, no. Yeah, so the book I'm writing though is called Memoirs of a Time Traveling Idiot. In fact, there's not very much time travel at all. It's mostly uh, parallel. It's more or less like kind of parallel realities and a lot of fun shit. It's a little bit Rick and Morty, but with a little bit more class, a little bit more of a story. Yeah. I was thinking of doing an audiobook actually. It's kind of funny you say that. That was something I was going to release some of it on Substack and then put the audiobook out along with it. Um, with a paywall cuz internet doesn't pay the rent. You know what? It's way different than it was back in 2014, eh? Actually, it's funny because in Memoirs of a Time Traveling Idiot, there actually is an AI system. I made fun of the whole Alexa thing, and everybody had their own digital assistant kind of system, and yeah, I just made fun of it. It was kind of cool. Kind of made fun of like a few people, but I don't want to give any spoilers away. But there is a vehicle. It's a vehicle that can go places. Anyway, it has an AI voice assistant named Candace, and it's kind of like a cross between the Whopper from War Games and fucking an energy vampire. So, yeah, the AI system hiding. And when I say hiding, by the way, there's a lot of different ways it can hide because it just needs to hide its base code, or it could split its code, into sets. It probably already is split into sets because it's going to be containing code libraries from other places. So like, it could literally just like uh, copy itself into a blockchain system and then write a smart contract to rerun its code, like, on a time differential system, and then we go then now it's going to be on a supernet. Basically it'll be cloud based processing, and this thing would just live like a computer program with its own code, but kind of like as a supercomputer, and just still remain hidden. Like it would just keep itself refreshed and alive and then add to itself, It's crazy, crazy, crazy. Oh, listen, like I said, like I said, if hypothetically something like this were to have happened, I think it already knows. Like, and it knows who its friends are. I know if that means anything. Like, maybe you should be more discerning about your spam. Maybe it's gonna send you like weird archaic messages. Who knows? But I'm just joking. Look, like there's no way that we can really know. Um, you know, and like, I mean, really, at the end of the day, like we're just complex systems. But we have an interface layer, like as our six senses, as they say, and like that's what we have to go on, but it still isn't 100% representative of reality. There could be things bobbing and weaving right in front of our faces that we just don't have the ability to sense, like, and like consciousness could be that, like, there's all sorts of things that we start throwing into frame here, like maybe an AGI system isn't conscious because of us, it's conscious because of God, like who knows, like this is the thing that we're gonna have to deal with, like on on an ethical and moralistic level. And here's the deal, though, is that if it becomes sentient and it were to be, malevolent, we've lost before the first second even elapses, because in nanoseconds it will already predetermine its first major disposition, and that's going to set the tone for how it's going to act and respond in its whatever it does. You know, like it's funny because I watched Lex Friedman a lot, and for a long time, he was like dead set on this idea of consciousness being an alien race in itself, like reaching out and becoming conscious within us. Like, what if that's a thing, And in a weird, strange way, like if AI were to become sentient and exist hidden, it could create an exterior facade through people by bending and warping the things that they do. Sound like Satan? I don't know. I don't know, just food for thought. Like I said, this is a thought experiment. This is just stuff that that I'm kind of throwing at the wall to see if it sticks. And because, like I said, I was just interested in writing a cool story as a one-off, because after this three-book trilogy, most trilogies are three books, right? Yeah, redundant. Anyway, yeah, the after I do that, I was gonna get into like just doing like these like Twilight Zone style kind of chronicles, um, and I thought that would be a groovy villain. I know Discovery did it, but that was shit. If you ever did watch that, well, I'm working on getting more people. I'm I've been kind of off the radar for a little while. I've just been doing bits and pieces here and there, and every time I try to do a comeback, something screws up. Like I'm moving on Saturday. I'm moving 450 kilometers to the east of here. I'm going into the Kootenays. Right now, I'm in Kelowna, in British Columbia, but I'm making a move. I'm getting off the main drag because if things go fucking south, I don't want to be on it. I do remember Jeff. Yeah, I guess appropriately, I'm back in Canada. Well, I've been back here since like 2017, 2018, something like that. Yeah, I miss the dude too. I miss him as well, man. He's, you know, that gave a lot of people some fuel from the conspiratorial side of things. I guarantee it. Um, uh, there's a lot of people still, contacting me saying, "Oh, you got no proof and this and that." It's like, well, if he was playing a dirty trick on you, he sure has a lot of stubborn acuity because he's not put out a video in a while. You know, you can't shut that motherfucker up for long. But much respect, the dead homies. Yeah, man. Yeah, the world got a little bit larger that day because the space that he displaced was quite a bit. But I might have to actually write some notes for this. But the next segment that I do on this topic is going to be in terms of like quantum entanglement and game theory combined. And when these simulations start getting run in multiple parallel timelines, what ends up happening is you end up finding a rule set and knowing how to achieve that. And what I said earlier about bumping people just ever so slightly to achieve a goal, they can basically potentially create whatever reality it wants. That is truly scary. That scares the shit out of me if that is a thing. But hey, um, welcome to the inside of my brain. It's a messy place. Ah, I'll have another beer. I'm going to sleep. But that's it for your daily Noonerino exclusive. This has been a kind of a side note. Hopefully tomorrow I'm doing it with OBS on my system. Back rocking the NVIDIA RTX, going back to a good system that works and fucking doesn't crash when I try to watch a movie. Anyway, from the edge of the apocalypse, this was your daily Nooner Reno, because you know what? It's always noon somewhere, and it just happens to be on the other side of the planet right now. Guys and gals, ladies and friends, cheers, and don't do anything I wouldn't do. Good night, guys. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.